Recording in progress.
Herzlich willkommen zu unserem heutigen Film.
Welcome to today's film screening, Pesticides in Africa, and a discussion with the film director Katja Becker and guests from Nairobi and Abuja. My name is Beate Adolf. I'm responsible for the Africa desk at the Heinrich-Böll Foundation. And the topic pesticides is very important also for this Alternative Green Week. And we also published the Pesticide Atlas. And there's also a call for a ban on the export of pesticides that are banned in Europe. And today, the film Toxic Business will lead us right onto the agricultural field in Kenya, and we will see how small-scale farmers are being approached by large-scale companies in order to sell their products. And the pressure of an growing population, the Kenyan government actually focuses on the well-known mix of pesticides and fertilizers, and our film shows what kind of success they achieve, but also that the agricultural sector is more and more doubting this path. Kenya's media are reporting about the double standards of Europe, and also the European Green Deal, which actually demands a reduction of pesticides, and which will play a role in the negotiations in February between the African Union and the European Union. I would also like to introduce to you Silke Bollmoor. She will take over after the film. She's an ecotoxicologist. She's been living in Kenya for a long time, and she has collected data on the import of substances that are banned in Europe and has actually accompanied this work from a scientific point of view. So welcome, Dr. Silke Bollmoor. So please stay with us until after the film. And now I wish you many interesting impressions. And I can only say, start the film, please.
Weltweit hungern über 800 Millionen Menschen. 10-mal so viele wie Deutschland Einwohner hat. Trotz einer globalen Produktionssteigerung nimmt ihre Zahl weiter zu. Und das, obwohl bei einer gerechten Verteilung jeder Mensch satt werden könnte. Die internationalen Saatgut- und Pestizidhersteller werden nicht müde, im Kampf gegen den Hunger auf ihre Lösungen zu pochen. Gerade in Entwicklungsländern, wie hier in Kenia, wollen sie dafür die traditionelle Landwirtschaft abschaffen und die Gesetze, die diese beschützt, am liebsten gleich mit. Doch mit welchen Produkten sind sie hier auf dem Markt? Und sind ihre Ansätze tatsächlich die besseren? Welche Alternativen gibt es in einer Welt, in der Bevölkerungswachstum und Klimawandel zu immer größeren Konflikten führen? In Kenia wird Gemüse an kleinen Marktständen eingekauft, die von einem Tag auf den anderen entstehen und über Nacht verschwinden können. Woher die Nahrungsmittel kommen, lässt sich kaum nachvollziehen. Genauso wenig wie gesund das Essen ist. Wie überall auf der Welt gilt auch hier: Der Preis muss stimmen, das Produkt gut aussehen. Für den kenianischen Experten Daniel Maingi von der Kenya Food Alliance ist das Grund zur Sorge. Er befürchtet, dass Bauern viel zu oft hochtoxische Pestizide einsetzen, in der Hoffnung, ihre Ernteerträge so steigern zu können. Die wenigsten von ihnen sind sich im Klaren über die richtige Dosierung oder Wirkungsweise. Er will Klarheit. Welche Gifte holen sich die Menschen hier auf ihren Teller?
We bought some vegetables today. They're looking good, but because it's an open market and the sources are not very clear, I really want to know what chemicals are on all these produce. And so I'm going to use the local institutions to try and test this produce to see what's on it.
In Kenia leben rund 70% der Menschen als Kleinbauern, die eine durchschnittliche Landfläche von unter 1 Hektar bewirtschaften. Moderne Gerätschaften wie Trecker, Silos und Erntemaschinen können sich die wenigsten leisten. Hilflos stehen sie oft den Naturgewalten gegenüber, bei denen ihre Felder vertrocknen, überschwemmt oder von Schädlingen vernichtet werden. Mit der Rückendeckung der Regierung versucht die Industrie, die Kleinbauern in die chemische Landwirtschaft zu bringen und von den Vorteilen von modernem Saatgut, chemischem Pflanzenschutz und Düngemitteln zu überzeugen. Agrarshops in dörflichen Regionen führen inzwischen ein buntes Sortiment und preisen einen giftigen Cocktail für jedes Problem an. Mit diesen Produkten, so das Versprechen, soll in Zukunft niemand mehr hungern müssen.
What we know is that the population is growing. Africa is expected to grow by almost to double what we have, the current population. Even Kenya, for example, in the next few years, we will be looking at a population of 70 million. So what can we do such that at 2050, we'll have enough food? So one of the things would be, if the land is not increasing, then we should come up with new ways of doing, of producing more. Can we use the same acreage to produce more? Can we use new technologies, maybe greenhouse technology or any other technology? It has happened in some parts of the world. So can we see what has happened in that part of the world and scale it up and use it in other parts of the world? So if we can do that, then I think it is possible.
Daniel Maingi beobachtet die Lobbyarbeit der Chemiebranche in Kenia kritisch. Aus seiner Sicht ist es höchste Zeit, eine Gegenbewegung zu schaffen. Er will bei den Konsumenten anfangen, ihnen zeigen, welchen Gefahren sie von der Industrie ausgesetzt werden. Er hofft, dass es durch die Konsumenten zu einem Kurswechsel in der Landwirtschaft kommen kann, ähnlich wie in Deutschland, wo der Markt für Agrarchemikalien mittlerweile immer kleiner wird. Deswegen bringt er das auf den Straßenmärkten gekaufte Gemüse in das Labor für Lebensmittelsicherheit der Universität von Nairobi und lässt es hier untersuchen.
We have some samples that we bought from the market, so we want to ask that the Department of Public Health helps us check them, and whether they may have any harm to our health.
Okay, let me see what.
As a Food Alliance Network of Kenya, we said, let's begin to look at this from an evidence-based approach. Let's approach the Department of Public Health, Pharmacology, Toxicology to help us test, and we hope maybe we'll be able to go back now to the consumers and the farmers and create awareness. The issue of food safety in Kenya is beginning to become important. We've had issues of consumers and farmers, small-scale farmers, who are badly affected. They have various forms of cancers. They have a lot of allergies that are developing, that are cropping up. And that effect has actually skyrocketed.
The threat is real. These chemicals have been associated with so many adverse effects which the public may not be aware. So keep it up, and we will promise to collaborate with you.
What is this business that we are doing, allowing so much chemicals to be sprayed on our vegetables, our fruits, our tomatoes, everything? And what exactly is the effect that is happening, that we are pushing onto the people and onto the environment?
Genau diese Frage treibt auch die Umweltwissenschaftlerin Silke Bollmoor um, die seit einigen Jahren in Nairobi lebt. Sie hat sich die hier registrierten Produkte genauer angeschaut und ist auf schockierende Ergebnisse gestoßen. Von rund 700 Agrarpestiziden, die aus der ganzen Welt importiert werden, wären über ein Viertel wegen ihrer Wirkstoffe in Europa illegal. Die 173 Produkte, die von Bayer, Syngenta und BASF stammen, sind davon keine Ausnahme. Jedes dritte Pflanzenschutzmittel aus Europa wäre in Europa verboten. Dass diese Konzerne bewusst in Absatzmärkte gehen, in denen es keine Schutzprogramme gibt, bereitet Silke große Sorge.
Es gibt keine Monitoringprogramme für Flüsse, für Böden, für Bienen, für Insekten, so wie es Langzeitmonitoringprogramme, so wie es die in Europa gibt. Das heißt, wir wissen gar nicht, ob wir vor einem Umweltproblem stehen oder nicht, weil wenig Daten aufgenommen werden und gerade auch im Wasserbereich wenig Daten aufgenommen werden, wenige Pestizidanalysen durchgeführt werden, es gibt wenig Labore, die Analysen sind zu teuer und wieder, es gibt kein Bewusstsein dafür, weder von der Regierung noch von der Bevölkerung.
In den Regalen der dörflichen Agrarshops stapeln sich die in der EU verbotenen Pestizide. Bayer-Produkte wie Anthrakol, Basta oder Milras. BASF-Produkte wie Cadre oder das Syngenta-Pestizid Primagram mit dem Wirkstoff Atrazin, der in Deutschland seit 1991 und in der Schweiz seit 2007 verboten ist. Es handelt sich nicht nur um ein Produkt, ein Versehen. Man könnte dahinter eine Strategie vermuten, um aus alten und gefährlichen Wirkstoffen Profit zu schlagen, solange sie in dem Entwicklungsland noch zugelassen sind.
Ein US-Gericht hat die Bayer-Tochter Monsanto zu Schmerzensgeld verurteilt, weil ihr glyphosathaltiges Unkrautvernichtungsmittel Roundup Krebs verursacht haben soll.
Bayer shares plunged earlier by the most in 15 years, investors weighing the potential costs of a protracted legal battle after newly acquired Monsanto was hit with $289 million in damages.
The case was filed back in 2016 when Mr. Johnson alleged that Monsanto's weed killers caused him non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, a judge expedited the case due to the severity of his illness, and Johnson has only a few months to live.
In Amerika ist Johnson einer von Tausenden an krebserkrankten Klägern, die mit dem Wirkstoff Glyphosat gearbeitet haben. In Europa wird immer wieder über ein Verbot gestritten. In Kenia ist wenig davon zu spüren. Glyphosat ist ein absoluter Verkaufsschlager. Der Wirkstoff ist in 68 Produkten enthalten, unter anderem in dem Produkt Roundup von Bayer und Touchdown von Syngenta. Industrienahe Studien weisen darauf hin, dass bei richtigem Schutz keine Gefahr besteht. Doch auf den Produkthinweisen von Glyphosat wird auf keine Krebsgefahr hingewiesen. Es wird nur als geringfügig gefährlich eingestuft, gekennzeichnet durch ein grünes Label. Joseph hat vor einigen Jahren an einem intensiven Training vom Ministerium teilgenommen und ist ausgebildeter Sprayer. Er wird häufig von anderen Dorfbewohnern beauftragt, auch das Herbizid Glyphosat zur Unkrautvernichtung mit seiner Giftspritze auf die Felder zu bringen. Früher musste das Unkraut mit schwerer körperlicher Handarbeit herausgerupft werden.
Wamechukua hii mambo ya kupika dawa sasa, la kama sio kama hapo awali. Ndio unaona hivi karibu katika maeneo hii unaweza pata mahali pa mausoni, unapata kuna vijana chipukizi ambao wamepungua maduka ya kupeana hizo madawa ya mifugo na mimea.
Nicht nur der Sprayer setzt sich den toxischen Gefahren der Produkte aus, die ganze Familie ist betroffen. Denn insbesondere in kleinbäuerlichen Regionen liegen die bewirtschafteten Felder direkt an den Häusern. Die Felder sind oftmals so klein, dass kein von der Industrie angedachter Mindestabstand zum Schutz der Familie oder auch von Fließgewässern eingehalten werden kann. Besonders hoch ist das Risiko für schwangere Frauen, wenn sie in Regionen leben, in denen Insektizide eingesetzt werden. In den USA wurde über einen Zeitraum von 20 Jahren beobachtet, dass es in entsprechenden Gebieten zu zahlreichen Frühgeburten kam und Kinder oftmals einen geringeren Intelligenzquotient besaßen. Besonders dramatisch ist der Produktwirkstoff Chlorpyrifos. Die Wahrscheinlichkeit, dass Kinder mit Autismus geboren werden, verdreifacht sich durch seine Anwendung. Das Gift wurde 2009 in Deutschland für den generellen Einsatz verboten. In Kenia sind 28 Produkte mit genau diesem Wirkstoff registriert, unter anderem das Produkt Bulldog Star von Bayer. Viele Pestizide stammen aus Europa, werden hier entwickelt und durchlaufen ihr erstes Zulassungsverfahren. Aufgrund von Geheimhaltungsklauseln und Urheberrecht bleiben die Unterlagen, die sie für die Bewertung ihrer Produkte einreichen müssen, Verschlusssache. So können kritische Politiker wie Maria Heubuch nur mutmaßen, wieso einige Produkte nicht vom Markt genommen werden und wie gefährlich diese wirklich sind.
Der große Knackpunkt bei den Zulassungen von Wirkstoffen ist bei uns die Transparenz. Es ist nicht transparent, welche Studien herangezogen werden. Es ist nicht transparent die Studie selber. Also unabhängige Wissenschaftler können es nicht überprüfen. Es ist im Grunde genommen ein Mauscheln zwischen den Konzernen und unseren Behörden. Also ich muss es fast schon so nennen. Wenn unsere deutsche Bundesanstalt für Risikobewertung für eine Zulassung, jetzt nehme ich das Beispiel Glyphosat, weil es einfach jetzt überall präsent ist, für eine Zulassung Copy-Paste macht von den Studien des Herstellers, in dem Fall Monsanto. Und dann, ich meine, das ist ja immer noch einigermaßen legitim, wenn ich die Quelle habe und dann noch die Quelle schwärzt, also die Quelle rausnimmt, dass es so aussieht, als wäre das jetzt eine Erkenntnis von der BfR, dann ist es schlicht und einfach unwissenschaftlich. Und das darf nicht passieren.
Um mit den Chemieprodukten die Kleinbauern in den Entwicklungsländern zu erreichen, veranstaltet die Agrarindustrie große Expo-Events. Farmer aus der Umgebung werden mit Bussen gebracht. Sie kommen in der Hoffnung, hier Produkte für schnellere und erfolgreichere Landwirtschaft finden zu können.
I came here so that I can acquire a little more knowledge, so that I can produce more, and or else I develop where I'm weaker in my family, in my farm, so that I can produce more, and I get more knowledge from other farmers who are better than me.
Mit lustigen Tanzeinlagen versuchen die großen Produzenten wie Bayer oder Syngenta, die Gifte an die Bauern zu bringen. Die Aussteller sind von ihren Produkten überzeugt. Ihre Message ist klar. Der Anwender braucht sich keine Gedanken zu machen. Für Sicherheit sorgt der Konzern.
You make sure also the product you are bringing is safe to the environment in the sense that it doesn't interfere with any other living creature in the environment. If you are targeting insect, let it be the target insect, and we make sure the product is registered and the farmer is aware and uses it in the right way.
Daniel von der Kenia Food Alliance hat ebenfalls den Weg zur Expo gefunden, um sich ein Bild zu machen, welche Produkte die Konzerne hier anpreisen. Für Probleme gibt es zwar viele verschiedene Produktlösungen, aber oft einhergehend mit hochgiftigen Mitteln.
When you see those chemical companies competing for the attention of the farmers, it's very interesting because one has one solution, another one has multiple solutions for that same problem. Unfortunately, what you're not seeing is farmers who are talking about alternative methods. It's all about selling and selling solutions for the same problem.
Bislang erwirtschaften die Konzerne weniger als 6% ihres globalen Pestizidumsatzes in der afrikanischen Landwirtschaft. Das bedeutet riesige Profitmöglichkeiten auf dem Kontinent. Und es sieht gut für sie aus. Allein in Kenia vervierfachte sich der Import von Pestiziden in den letzten 15 Jahren. Bayer verspricht dabei, die besten und modernsten Produkte auf den Markt zu bringen.
Innovation is very key for us right now as Bayer as a company, bringing in something new that can offer solution to the farmer.
Moderne Produkte? Das könnte man auch anders sehen. Viele Wirkstoffe wie die auf der Messe präsentierten Pestizide Roundup, Milras oder Senkor stammen aus den 70er Jahren. Ihre Genehmigungen sind auf dem europäischen Markt stark in der Kritik. Auch das Syngenta-Produkt Actelic Super gehört zu diesen zweifelhaften Produkten. US-amerikanische Behörden stufen dessen Wirkstoff Permetrin als möglicherweise krebserregend ein. In der EU wurde es vom Markt genommen, weil es hochtoxisch für Fische und Bienen ist. Und auch in dem Herstellungsland Schweiz ist der Wirkstoff seit 2007 verboten. Doch bei kenianischen Bauern wie Lydia ist Actelic Super trotzdem sehr beliebt. Sie schützen damit ihre Ernte gegen Schädlinge und deren Larven. Leider gibt es Nebenwirkungen.
After you have applied the powder, you don't just start consuming immediately. You have to wait for about 2 months or even more before you start consuming, so that that powder, the strength don't affect you so much. But if you just use immediately, you have some side effects on your body or in the stomach.
Kritiker nennen diese Verkaufsstrategie einen doppelten Standard. in Anlehnung an die doppelte Moral, die dieser zugrunde liegt. Während die Gefahren einer Krebserkrankung, Schädigung von Wasserorganismen oder Bienen zu groß für den eigenen Markt in Europa sind, lässt es das europäische Recht zu, diese Gifte trotzdem an andere Länder außerhalb der EU zu verkaufen. Und die Konzerne machen davon nur allzu gern Gebrauch. Auf Anfrage gibt Bayer an, dass die EU-Verbote für den Export nach Kenia nicht relevant sind, denn sie richten sich an den OECD-Ländern aus.
Bayer verkauft ausschließlich Produkte, die in einem OECD-Land registriert sind.
Übersetzt bedeutet das, dass für den Export nach Kenia immer der schwächste Standard eines dieser 36 Länder gilt. Je nach Politik und Land variieren die einzelnen Produktverbote. Doch der Export nach Kenia muss erst dann gestoppt werden, wenn in allen 36 OECD-Ländern ein Verbot existiert. Ein denkbar schlechter Schutz für den afrikanischen Markt. So wurde auch in einer Studie von 2014 festgestellt, dass die Anzahl der in den OECD-Mitgliedstaaten vom Markt genommenen Wirkstoffe stark variierte und kein einziges Produkt gefunden wurde, das gleichzeitig in allen Ländern verboten ist.
Dann frage ich mich, wollen wir der Totengräber in anderen Regionen dieser Welt sein? Ich will das nicht. Ich will mich daran auch nicht beteiligen. Also es sind Doppelstandards. Wenn wir hier in Europa sagen, wir verbieten diesen Wirkstoff wieder, weil wir entweder gesundheitliche Probleme sehen oder Umweltprobleme, dann ist es doch unglaublich, dass wir es trotzdem exportieren. Also für mich ist das eine Doppelmoral, die so nicht sein kann.
Eine solche Doppelmoral findet sich in der Wirkstoffgruppe der Neonicotinoide. In vielen Ländern Europas wurden entsprechende Produkte vom Markt genommen, aus Sorge um Bestäuber wie Schmetterlinge und Bienen. Alleine in Deutschland haben Wissenschaftler einen alarmierenden Rückgang von 75% aller Fluginsekten beobachtet. Eine große Gefahr für die Ernährungssicherheit, die mit diesen Pestiziden in Verbindung gebracht wird. In Kenia gibt es noch Wildbienen. Beeindruckende Schwärme, die sich hier und da ansiedeln. Die Leiterin des Bieneninstituts des Ministeriums für Landwirtschaft und Tierhaltung, Grace Asiko, kennt die große Bedeutung der kleinen, sensiblen Lebewesen für die Ernährungssicherheit. Aussagen über die Bienenpopulation sind schwierig. Ein flächendeckendes Beobachtungsprogramm für die vorhandene Anzahl der Insekten gibt es in Kenia nicht.
When I was growing up, I used to be more often stung by the bee than now, because I would go around a tree playing, not knowing that there's a colony inside. When I put my hand in a depression, definitely there were bees almost everywhere. This time round, I see as if kids play so much, and I don't see them saying they're stung. So, which means definitely the space for bees is limited.
Die Wichtigkeit der kleinen Insekten ist unbestritten. Für Grace ist es eine Herzensangelegenheit, Kleinbauern davon zu überzeugen, auf ihren Landflächen Bienenstöcke aufzustellen. Sie will ihnen die Angst vor den Bienen nehmen, neuen Lebensraum für die Insekten schaffen und damit nicht zuletzt für eine Ernährungssicherheit in den Regionen kämpfen.
You know, you have to make the puffs gentle so that the bees don't get irritated. You have to smoke them gently but effectively. Bees are very sensitive to the environment. As we are also told, they are indicators of the environment. If they are there, we are happy that the environment is relatively clean. And I can see there's a bit of honey. You know, when there's biodiversity, there's continuity. And then also when you have fruit crops around you or plants, then you are ensured of the quality production because of pollination. The bees increase food production through quality and quantity. Yeah, when it's quality, quantity, then there's food security. And when you are all food secure, then you are health nation. And the problem I have is now the bee health.
Auch wenn es noch viele Bienen in Kenia gibt, macht sich Grace Sorgen. Sie beobachtet eine Abnahme der Völker und hat bereits den Pestizideinsatz in der Landwirtschaft in Verdacht. Beweise hat sie allerdings nicht.
From the way I see, because we see our bees dwindling, we have never used to have a dwindling of bees before. But because from the way we are observing now, there is evidence that bees are declining, and for whatever purpose we have to investigate. I believe the toxic effect from chemicals could be playing a critical role. People are now more well versed with the use of chemicals, but they are not using it sustainably. So it means there could be some chemicals which are being used and possibly they have been banned elsewhere because of their toxic effects. So for that matter, maybe people are doing it out of ignorance or they just defy whatever whatever is already known.
Der Verdacht liegt nahe, dass Grace recht hat mit ihrer Vermutung. Denn für die in Europa stark eingeschränkten Insektizide findet die Industrie einen immer größer werdenden Absatzmarkt in Ostafrika. Eine Farce, wenn über die dringend notwendige Ertragssteigerung gefachsimpelt wird und gleichzeitig von derselben Branche die wichtigsten Hilfsmittel, die Bestäuber, bewusst in Gefahr gebracht werden. Auch für den deutschen Konzern Bayer sind genau diese Produkte ein wesentlicher Bestandteil im afrikanischen Sortiment. Der vom Konzern entwickelte Wirkstoff Imidacloprid wird in Kenia mittlerweile in 56 Produkten verschiedener Firmen verkauft. 9 Produkte direkt von Bayer. Und es handelt sich nicht um irgendeinen Wirkstoff. 1 Teelöffel mit 5 Gramm Imidacloprid kann über 1 Milliarde Bienen töten.
It has to be a responsibility of all of us, the user and also the producer of the manufacturer of the chemical. But I think the larger part or the onus, the responsibility is with the supplier or the manufacturer of the chemical, because they know what is in this chemical. They know how it should be used, and if people are not using it in the correct way, then it should be their responsibility to try and disseminate the information, get the information to the farmer.
Für die kenianische Regierung hat die Entwicklung der Landwirtschaft Priorität. Ein großes Augenmerk legt sie auf die Förderung von modernem Hybridsaatgut. Dies wurde durch die Kreuzungen verschiedener Sorten verändert, um optimale Ergebnisse zu produzieren. Die Industrie verspricht, dass die neuen Sorten deutlich resistenter gegen viele Schädlinge sind und der Ertrag der Maisernte um das bis zu 8-fache höher ausfällt. Einziger Wermutstropfen: der Bauer kann das Saatgut nicht mehr selber vermehren und muss es jedes Jahr neu kaufen. Für einen Projektbesuch bei Farmern verlässt Daniel Nairobi. Nach extremer Dürreperiode hat endlich die Regenzeit eingesetzt. 3 Wochen zu spät, dafür umso intensiver. Daniels Projektpartner Cosmas nutzt noch altes Saatgut. Daniel will sehen, wie er mit den schwierigen Wetterschwankungen zurechtkommt und ob er etwas zum Ernten haben wird.
Wakati hakukuwa na mvua, but imeproduce.
Inatoa hata kama ni kidogo.
Cosmas here has been planting indigenous local corn varieties for quite a while now. He says that when he plants his own seed that he saves and replants every season, he gets a good amount of produce to feed his family, no matter what the season is. His neighbors that are planted around here only get long stalks that never put any ears, neither do they put any grain. And so they end up cutting and feeding livestock, but no food.
Noch nutzt der Großteil der kenianischen Kleinbauern traditionelle Sorten, die sie selber züchten und vermehren. Dafür droht ihnen in Zukunft Strafe. Denn um den Wandel in der Landwirtschaft voranzutreiben, hat die Regierung verschärfte Gesetze im Umgang mit Saatgut verabschiedet. Daniel sieht in diesem Schritt eine extreme Gefahr für die Bauern und das Land. Er vermutet, dass es nicht wirklich um die Ernährungssicherheit des Landes geht, sondern ganz andere Geschäftsinteressen dahinter stehen.
The truth of the matter is, and what we are hearing from farmers, is that the old varieties, including old hybrids, when you put them side by side with newer varieties, whether they are from Syngenta, whether they are from Amiran or Bayer, they are not any better with 50-year-old varieties that were produced by the Kenya Seed Company.
Und dennoch, am 11. Mai 2016 ist Kenia im Interesse großer Saatgutunternehmen dem UPOV-Abkommen von 1991 beigetreten. Das Vertragswerk schützt Züchtungen vor illegalen Kopien und soll eine einheitliche Rechtslage schaffen. Für die Industrie ein Grundstein für neue Investitionen auf dem Kontinent. Kenia hat seine Gesetze angepasst, um Fälschungen zu verhindern. Kein Saatgut darf zum Verkauf angeboten werden, solange es nicht zertifiziert ist. Für viele Kleinbauern sind dies schlechte Nachrichten. Bereits 2014 warnte die Daily Nation, dass dieses Verbot auf rund 70% der Landbevölkerung Auswirkungen haben wird, da sie seit Generationen traditionelles Saatgut benutzen und untereinander tauschen. In Zukunft droht ihnen hierfür eine Strafe von 10 Millionen Kenia-Schilling, was in etwa dem Einkommen von 80 Jahren entspricht, oder 5 Jahre Gefängnis.
If we allow laws and policies to come in that are giving more space to corporations and to businesses to continue damaging the environment for farming, to continue criminalizing farmers for practicing the culture of farming, we are going to end up being food insecure. And that will not help anybody, but just the corporations.
Auf den ersten Blick hat die Industrie in Kenia Erfolg. Die Erntestatistiken bezeugen für Kenia einen zunehmenden Ertrag. Tatsächlich hat Daniel aber recht, denn der zweite Blick zeigt, dass sich auch die Gesamtfläche für Maisanbau seit 1980 nahezu verdoppelt hat. Trotz der zunehmenden Verwendung von Kunstdünger, Pestiziden und Hybridsaatgut in den letzten Jahren ist eine tatsächliche Ertragssteigerung bislang ausgeblieben. Eine Entwicklung, die insbesondere für die Ernährungssicherheit dramatisch ist. Denn mit der gleichzeitigen Bevölkerungszunahme wird die Portion auf dem Teller immer kleiner. Dennoch schreitet die Industrie voran und strebt in Afrika nach einer chemischen Landwirtschaft.
We want to change also the mindset of our farmers, that we need to do our agriculture with that business mind or profit objective. So I think we are changing that. We want our farmers to understand that this is a business and it's a profession just like any other. You can earn from farming, you can earn from agriculture, just like you earn from any other job.
Auch Gerrit Gerdes arbeitet mit dem Ziel, dass die Kleinbauern von ihrer Arbeit leben können und genügend Ertrag auf ihren Feldern erwirtschaften. Im Auftrag des deutschen Bundesentwicklungsministeriums leitet er das GIZ-Programm zur Sanierung von ausgelaubten und versauerten Ackerflächen in Westkenia. Die vom Land fokussierte Maismonokultur mit modernem Hybridsaatgut ist seiner Meinung nach ein riesiges Problem. Insbesondere, da Hybridsaatgut nur dann höhere Erträge bringt, wenn die Gegebenheiten gut sind. Und das sind sie bei weitem nicht. Für Gerrit sind die ausgelaugten Böden ein wesentlicher Grund, weshalb Ernteerträge nicht höher ausfallen. Nicht wie von der Industrie behauptet, das vielfach noch verwendete lokale Saatgut. Daher lernen Kleinbauern in dem GIZ-Training den Aufbau eines Kreislaufes als Alternative zu Kunstdünger und Monokultur. Es scheint absurd, aber ist nicht vollständig von der Hand zu weisen. Entwicklungsprojekte in Ostafrika leisten Aufräumarbeiten, um das Erdreich, zerstört durch Industrielösungen, wieder fruchtbar zu machen.
So even when harvesting, you don't have to use djembe because the soil is now better, as you can see.
And it has a lot of humus because you can see the brown dark color that is.
Also in einer Handvoll fruchtbaren Bodens haben sie mehr Mikroorganismen als Menschen auf der Erde leben, also mehr als 7 Milliarden Mikroorganismen. Das bedeutet, das ist ein Eingriff in die Natur, wenn ich Pestizide, die ja nie spezifisch wirken, sondern meistens unspezifisch sind, Breitbandwirkung haben, dass sie dann die Bodenorganismen natürlich auch stark schädigen. Und das hat dann wiederum einen negativen Effekt.
Das GIZ-Konzept setzt auf 4 bodenfreundliche Prinzipien, die konträr zu üblichen Industrielösungen sind. Minimale Bodenbearbeitung, ständige pflanzliche Bodenbedeckung, Fruchtwechsel und Artenvielfalt. So wird die Muttererde neu aufgebaut und vor starker Sonne geschützt. Das Erdreich wird mit neuen Nährstoffen angereichert und die Bodenerosionen verringert.
Es ist so, dass wir nach dieser Zeit sagen können, dass wir im Schnitt die Erträge sowohl von Mais als auch von Boden um 30% erhöht haben. Aber natürlich, je länger wir arbeiten mit den gleichen Flächen, desto fruchtbarer wird der Boden.
Dass diese Methoden erfolgreich sind, bestätigt Cosmas Odur Otieno. Früher setzte auch er auf seiner kleinen Farm, wie viele Kleinbauern, auf die Produkte der Chemieindustrie. Er will dahin nie wieder zurück.
The land was barren or poor. If I was not get this information or these skills, I thought the whole of the family, my family, would know where to go, even me.
And could you explain to us how the pesticides, what the pesticides did to your soil?
So the soil was very compacted, very, very poor. When the rains came, it washed even the topsoil because of these chemicals.
Schädlinge müssen bekämpft werden und machen auch vor Cosmas Farm nicht Halt. Im GIZ-Programm wurde ihm die in Kenia entwickelte Push-and-Pull-Methode zur natürlichen Schädlingsbekämpfung beigebracht. Getreide legt er nun als Mischkulturen an und setzt die in Afrika heimische Heilpflanze Desmodium zwischen die Reihen. Sie verströmt einen Wirkstoff, der Ungeziefer und Insekten vertreibt. Gleichzeitig hemmt sie die Keimung des schädlichen Wurzelparasiten Striga. Um das Feld herum pflanzt er einen Gürtel aus Elefantengras, das Insekten anzieht und in das diese ihre Eier ablegen. Doch die Larven können in dem Gras nicht überleben. Der Schädling ist besiegt. Und während das Getreide den Menschen ernährt, wird das Elefantengras als Tierfutter verwendet. Der Tiermist wird als Kompost verarbeitet. So wird auf der Farm ein vollkommener Nährstoffkreislauf geschaffen und Cosmas kann auf den Kauf teurer und gefährlicher Chemieprodukte verzichten.
So within your farm you are recycling all the nutrients.
All the nutrients.
Cattle is fed with
Yes,
organic,
with organic and the
fodder you
and
have on your farm.
Yes.
When you feed them, and the manure is also used
Back to the
for
farm.
Back to
making
the farm.
compost, and
Yes.
then it's
Back-
back to the field. So
Yes.
that you have the
So
complete-
it is a cycling.
Yes.
Recycling, eh?
Yeah. Before getting the knowledge and put the knowledge in practical, the farm was very poor. But after getting the knowledge, the farm getting richer and it will be richer. And I'm expected for the coming generation to get their land if it is virgin as the God created.
Ackerland ist die Basis unserer Ernährung. Eine falsche Nutzung oder Übernutzung hat fatale Folgen. Gegenmaßnahmen zu treffen ist teuer und ab einem bestimmten Zeitpunkt nahezu unmöglich. Pro Jahr werden durch Übernutzung, Erosionen und auch durch die Dynamik des Klimawandels mit extremen Dürren und Starkregen weltweit rund 6 Millionen Hektar Boden zerstört. Das unterstreicht, wie wichtig es ist, diese Entwicklung umzudrehen, solange wir es noch können. Im Norden von Kenia liegt die Turkana-Region. Es ist die Heimat von Nomaden. Die Agrarindustrie hat sich hier bislang nicht blicken lassen. Zu gering sind die Aussichten auf Profit. Dabei ist hier die Ernährungssituation besonders dramatisch. Über Jahrhunderte haben Übergrasung und gnadenlose Sonneneinstrahlung die Erde degradiert. Immer wieder werden die großen Tierherden der Nomaden von Dürren vernichtet und mit ihnen die Lebensgrundlage der Menschen. Eine kleine Gruppe von Enthusiasten versucht ohne chemische Produkte die Wüste zum Erblühen zu bringen. Sie wollen neue Möglichkeiten der Ernährung schaffen, bevor die Industrie die Menschen mit ihren Lösungen in die Abhängigkeit drängt. Auch wenn sie selber immer wieder von Zweifeln befallen werden und die Herausforderungen gigantisch erscheinen.
There was a very severe drought whereby cows and camels were dying, even goats. As we were driving along, we could see guys barricading the roads with the carcass of goats and cows, at least to get aid from the oil company or from the Red Cross. And that one moved my heart, and I was like, are we really going to make it here?
Nur in den allerersten Stunden des Tages kann gearbeitet werden. Ab 10 Uhr ist es zu heiß. Das Thermometer steigt oft auf über 40 Grad. Wasser ist das kostbarste Gut, die Tiere der Menschen größter Besitz. Ein Klima, in dem Konflikte schnell eskalieren und sichere Ernährung auch Frieden bedeutet.
Turkana has an average of 100 to 250 mils of rain a year, which that's why it's classed as arid, semi-arid. It's very harsh conditions and therefore big food security issue here. People are, for long times, like for big parts of the year, are struggling to feed themselves, feed their family and even feed their livestock. So there is a lot of relief, food aid, different NGOs doing different stuff here, trying to get them out of that, but it's more of a handover policy or handouts. So I think the idea of this side as well is we're trying to train community to empower themselves through knowledge and skills. So when they do end up taking over, they'll be able to run it without us being here.
What's the problem?
We have run out of water.
Anyway, yeah, Patti, there's too many trucks getting water from the borehole. A lot of water going to watering points for livestock. So there's going to be no water till this evening, maybe, if we get it.
Okay.
I'm not even sure. So we need to stop. Whatever we're doing. I mean, you've seen the tank. It's pretty much empty. The reservoir is empty. Top tank is empty.
Okay.
So basically, if we carry on with the cement, we'll get nothing this evening for the garden.
Okay.
So it's kind of, we're in a pretty dramatic situation, to be fair. There's not much else we can do. If we don't get water today, tomorrow will be a bit of a problem. Obviously, the constant care of the garden, the systems need attention. We can definitely go a few days without showering. That's not a problem. But it's the whole site itself that suffers, not only us. There's the camels. So you can see there's all the camels are drinking. So I think that's where the water is being sent to right now. Let's see where he is, huh? Lazima tupige lokiti kwanza tujue kama anaweza kuja na sisi kuzima.
Für heute ist die Situation entschärft. Wenn die Kamele getränkt sind, wird das Wasser zur Farm geleitet. Ivan will zeigen, dass die Menschen in Nordkenia nicht von Nahrungsmittellieferungen abhängig sein müssten. Denn mit jedem Liter Wasser, den eine Ziege oder ein Kamel trinkt, könnten auch viele Nahrungspflanzen bewässert werden und so deutlich mehr Menschen ernähren. Denn für die Produktion von 1 Kilo Kamelfleisch werden über 20.000 Liter und für 1 Kilo Ziegenfleisch über 8.000 Liter Wasser benötigt.
The original soil here is pretty much dead. There's no life into it, but slowly over the last 7 months we've been adding nutrients via compost and all these organic matters we're putting on top. We want to be sustainable, but we want to be more than sustainable. Sustainability is not enough. We want to, with the community and the land, become healing forces. We want to go further than sustainability.
Mit den Methoden der Permakultur wird in dem Projekt so schonungsvoll wie möglich mit der kostbaren Ressource Wasser umgegangen.
In 1 meter cubed, we can host around 90 to 110 plants. Generally, on a meter squared on the ground, conventionally you'd be around 10 to 15 plants. So there's a huge difference in the amount of plants we can grow, but also it's the fact that you can really select the soil you want in. So you can put your compost and your manure all mixed together in the right ratio into your sack. So it's got really good soil and really water efficient. I mean, we'll water them today and then we won't water them again for 3, 4, 5 days. And as you can see, the sun is really harsh. Everything dries up incredibly quickly, but these bags really retain a lot of moisture.
Es geht der Gruppe dabei nicht nur um die Menschen hier. Für sie ist es auch ein Labor, um Antworten auf künftige Krisen zu finden. Denn wenn der Klimawandel weiter voranschreitet, werden weite Teile Afrikas wie Turkana aussehen. Dabei experimentieren sie auch mit alten Saatgutsorten.
We have our ways of bringing in seed from our own gardens, from our homes, from our friends, from our families, and we've planted a lot of those on our site, including these baby tomatoes. They're a lot more resilient in these conditions, this hard, hot, high pH soil. Then we have tried commercial hybrid F1 variety tomatoes, and they didn't do anything. They didn't produce. I think we got one fruit, and then it got some disease and infection, and it was so weak. And I've seen that in so many other projects, in so many other areas, different soils. It's just that resilience, that genetic compatibility with slightly, or with climates that aren't in a greenhouse, cooled or heated, and then looked after like a princess, and added with chemicals and fertilizers. They just, without that, they don't produce. They don't survive. There we go. There's your answer right there. Look, I can even eat one. It does, apparently. Yeah, it works. It works.
Just I want to clean it. Yeah, the seed.
Over the last 7 months, we've had over 20 indigenous birds come back. There's butterflies, there's bees, there's insects. There's the bad ones, the good ones. The balance is coming back, so we're bringing back biodiversity.
We have an opportunity to be global players as opposed to this kind of subservient country that's so backwards and hopeless and needs so much help. Like, man, we've got this window of opportunity to come up on top and prove to the rest of the world that we are in charge of our own future for our own people, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's reliant on so much on these traditional values and beliefs and food systems and connection to the earth. We haven't lost it yet. So why let that go to welcome the development model that is largely failed everywhere else?
Daniel holt sich die Laborergebnisse von dem Marktgemüse ab und ist enttäuscht über die geringen Analysemöglichkeiten. Der Monitor zeigt zwar viele Ausschläge, doch betitelt werden können die wenigsten. Das staatliche Institut verfügt über nahezu kein Referenzmaterial. So bleibt ungewiss, ob es eine Verbindung zwischen Pestizidrückständen und der im Land steigenden Anzahl an Krebserkrankungen gibt. Innerhalb von nur 5 Jahren hat sich diese verdoppelt. Doch das, was in seinem Gemüse gefunden wurde, erschüttert ihn trotzdem.
So when we analyzed, some compounds could not be detected, but at least we managed to identify one, alpha BHC, which is shown in the chromatogram. It belongs to the organochlorine group.
Organochlorine?
Yeah,
okay.
The organochlorine is where we have the famous DDT.
Wow.
DDT ist in Kenia seit 1986 für den landwirtschaftlichen Gebrauch verboten. Trotzdem zeigen durchgeführte Studien am Lake Victoria 30 Jahre später noch hohe Werte des Wirkstoffs in Wasser und Böden. Das zeigt zum einen, dass Spätfolgen von Pestiziden noch nach Jahrzehnten auftreten können. Und zum anderen, wie lange es dauert, bis die Produkte nach einem Verbot weltweit vom Markt verschwunden sind. Insbesondere dann, wenn Konzerne erkannte Gefahren für Umwelt, Tiere und Menschen nicht zuletzt aus Profitgier ignorieren und auf Länder wie Kenia ausweichen, in denen es keinen Verbraucher- und Umweltschutz wie in Europa gibt.
Ja, ich hoffe, dass alle Teilnehmer.
I hope that all the participants are still with us for the discussion. Before we start with the discussion, I would like to encourage all participants to ask questions. I'm sure that you all know about Zoom and how to use the Q&A button, but for those of you who do not know it, it's the in German F&A or in English Q&A button. So please enter your questions there and we'll try to answer the questions during the discussion or maybe also at the end. Well, in yesterday's event, I think we could show quite clearly that we have a pesticide application problem in Germany and also an approval problem in Germany. And now the question is, how is the situation in the global south, for example, in Kenya and Nigeria? And also in the media, we tend to focus on Latin American countries where we have a high application rate for pesticides. However, Africa is very often forgotten in the discussion. And this might also be due to the fact that the application of pesticides is still at quite a low rate compared to other countries of global south. But I think that the film, which described the case of Kenya, has shown quite clearly that we have a much more urgent pesticide application problem, but also in terms of the certification or approval process. And I would like to talk about this with our guests who have joined us. I'm quite happy to be able to welcome Katja Becker. Hello, Katja. Katja is the film director, and with her production company, Uyuzi Media, is focusing on documentaries in the field of the environmental protection. And I'd also like to welcome Laila Liebetrau. She's the project lead of the Route to Food initiative, which is an initiative of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation in Nairobi. And over the past 2 years, the Route to Food initiative has been very actively accompanied scientific and also political work in order to show the shortcomings of the pesticides utilization. And Laila surely can tell us more about it. So welcome, Laila. In particular, also a big thank you because it's already quite late in Nairobi, so you are 2 hours ahead of our time. And the third guest I would like to welcome also very cordially is Ikena Donald Ofwebu. He is the project coordinator of the Heinrich-Böll Foundation in Abuja in Nigeria. And the Böll Foundation in Abuja has started to work on the topic of pesticides in Abuja a year ago, and we were also already able to show some shortcomings there. And how the government reacts can be told to us by Kenia. Unfortunately, we do not have a video from Kenia, but a still image, I hope, as the internet is not that good at the moment in Abuja. So, okay, welcome to all of you, and I'm looking forward to a lively discussion. But first of all, I would like to talk about the film itself. Katja, your documentary predominantly focus on human rights, environmental rights, and also social rights. And of course, there's a broad spectrum of possible topics. So why did you now pick up the topic pesticides in Kenia? Thank you very much, and also welcome to the large audience. I'm quite impressed how many people are joining in here. This is quite nice. Well, what made us pick up the topic of pesticides? Well, we have been traveling in particular through the East African region for the past 15 years, and we have many friends now there that live in the rural areas there as well, and are themselves small-scale farmers. And in fact, during our trips, we thought that we are eating healthy food. There are mangoes, bananas, and other fruits coming right from the small-scale farmers onto our plate. But after some discussions with our friends, we realized that they are faced with a shortage of land, and due to the increase in the population growth, they were forced to produce more and more on the same or even less land. And this made us look into the production there. And there we realized that even in the smallest villages where there's no running water and no electricity, our sprayers walking across the fields, and there were many shops that sold pesticides. And we took a closer look in order to find out what kind of products are they selling exactly. And we realized that there is an increasing trend of agro-pesticides that are being applied in Eastern Africa. And this is also being reflected in statistics. I mean, at the moment, the percentage lies around 2 to 4% of the global pesticide utilization, but between 2020 and 2025, the African market will, or the forecast is that there is a growth, considerable growth, and between 2005 and 15, we have seen a growth of more than 150%. So, and on the global average, we've seen an increase in 30% only. So here we can see where the shift of the pesticide producers goes to, which is on the African market. And for us, it is quite important to also take into account that scientific studies show that the pesticides application in the African countries is not as regulated as, for example, in Europe, in European countries, which actually has an impact on the health of the environment and the farmers. And so this makes it more scandalous and more problematic. So the companies are allowed to sell products that are being banned on the European market to sell them to the African market. And during our first research, we took a look at the products that these shops sold, and we compared it to the products that are being sold in Europe. And this is really a fact that we needed to make public, and also we had to show it to the small-scale farmers. This was actually the reason for us to produce this film. Well, you have rightly and nicely shown all the shortcomings and also the positive alternatives, actually, that do also exist and are also being applied. So from your point of view, what was the most impressive situation, or what was most moving? Well, this is very difficult to say because many scenes were actually not part of the film now. So we shot for approximately 2 months, almost without any pause. And of course, the film only has a certain length. So we had to limit ourselves. But when I think of what was most shocking or most moving, actually were the meetings with the people or encounters with the people who were firmly convinced that they would be doing something good when they were buying these products from Europe or from Germany. And this was really heartbreaking because I already knew, based on our research beforehand, that this is not the case. And that actually these countries import the most or the worst products and the most toxic products. And they thought, well, they're buying a German product, for example, and this must be a good product. So this was actually really heartbreaking and really devastating. Well, I can absolutely believe what you say and understand what you say. People just thought that they were buying a good product because it's coming from Europe. Well, and after the film was finished, did you also show it there, or was there an international interest in the film, or what did you do? Well, we shot for approximately 2 months, and then we had a very long post-production process where we also gave birth to a child and did many other things. So this was quite a huge challenge because we actually also wanted to develop 3 educational or awareness-raising films of 20-25 minutes each, as well as the 1-hour film that you've seen, which was supposed to be shown at festivals. And next to Brot für die Welt and Miseria, also the Heinrich-Böll Foundation was our partner in Kenya. And it was quite clear that we wanted to develop these educational, these awareness-raising films for the African market that NGOs could use for their awareness-raising work. And this is why we produced films in Kiswahili, English, German, and these country offices could use these films for their screenings. And I would like to commend the Heinrich-Böll Foundation for the great cooperation. Laila, for example, who was also part of the panel, and because throughout the campaign, Route to Food, they conducted large media campaigns in Nairobi and did a lot of background work and also more far-reaching research. Also with you, Silke, the media were actually or became aware of the topic and reported about that. And also a politician could be won over. And there were many screenings in smaller villages for the people there. And this was actually the main objective from my point of view, that the small-scale farmers are being informed. And this is something that we in Germany or in other countries, cannot do from here. So, and the long version of the film, this was produced at a later stage, and it was shown at festivals. And also next week on Saturday, the cinema tour will start. Due to the pandemic, we had to delay that, also in cooperation with the Heinrich-Böll Foundation and also other partners. And as we still have such a great audience here, so I would like to tell you, if you would like to organize an event and show this film, please contact us. I would be happy to help you. Yes, okay. There are also some questions in the audience, if I might briefly come to that before coming to Laila. There are questions in terms of obstacles. Were there any obstacles that you faced when it came to the shooting of the film? And how was the reaction of the industry or the government, for example? Could you say something about that? Yes, of course. Obstacles? Well, on a daily basis, I have to say. Well, where shall I start? I think one of the biggest obstacles was that the research and the shooting itself had to be done with 1 year of gap in between due to personal reasons, and all the protagonists that we had actually collected during our research were actually gone by the time we started the shooting of the film. And we did not have to start from scratch, but when we thought, well, now we can start to shoot and go there and meet the persons, then we had to do a new research. But the good thing is that we took a lot of time to do the film. Usually you have 20 shooting days for a film of that length, and we had, as I said, 2 months, and we shot or did shots on a daily basis, plus the research in advance, and the film would not have turned out like that if we didn't have taken the time. So if we hadn't taken the time. So of course, time is a huge obstacle because you do not get paid for that. But we were really eager. We were really enthusiastic about this topic and to do this film the way we did. And reactions from the government or also from the industry. Well, we contacted Bayer, BASF, Syngenta, and we wanted to get a statement from them. They replied in writing. And we also showed one of the quotes, but only from Bayer. Syngenta and BASF did not reply to us. And what was the name? The agricultural event in Kiricho, we met the Bayer representative there, or contacted the Bayer representative there. And this was also quite an interesting encounter, I would say, because she was fundamentally convinced that she was doing something good. And of course, she must have learned this from someone. And this is so dramatic to see. I mean, in my view, there's a lack of awareness with many people that they are doing something very problematic at the time. So thank you very much, Katja. I mean, there are many questions left, so maybe you can answer them directly in writing. And I would now go over to Laila, and I will talk in English in the chat. We already mentioned that if you need a translation, you should click on interpretation and choose the right channel.
Documentary highlighted already some of the issues around pesticide use in Kenya. And living in Kenya and working on pesticide issues, in particular on the use of very toxic pesticides, the so-called highly hazardous pesticides for the last 2 years, what is your perspective on pesticide issues in Kenya, and what effects do these exports have on the ground?
Thanks, Silke. So I think a lot of the observations we have made were mirrored to, are really, really similar to what was captured in the film that we've just watched. I think subsequent to the film being produced and the screenings that we've done in Nairobi and around the country, studies have shown that there are food residues in specifically kales and tomatoes, so residues of pesticide active ingredients that exceed the allowable maximum residue levels in Kenya, which are set according to EU standards. So this reflects this broader issue of pesticide misuse. We've also seen through these studies with Kenya Organic Agriculture Network, and which you were a part of, that sometimes pesticides are sprayed on the wrong crop or crops they weren't registered on. So for example, acephate is sprayed on tomatoes, even though it's only registered for use on roses and tobacco. And another problem of misuse is where you'll see, for example, insecticides being used to sort of treat fungal diseases. I think pre-harvest intervals is another really major problem of misuse. Often there's a real rush or urgency to sort of sell produce because farmers need the money. We particularly see this at times when it's like kids have to go back to school. I mean, it's something as sort of practical and logical as that. It's really, there's a rush to sort of sell produce. So even if farmers are aware of pre-harvest intervals, these are often not observed. So other observations we've made, and also through the course of our research, is really that in terms of bee population declines, we don't have enough data to show us really what
have what the declines have been on local bee populations. Most of the stories we're getting is much like I think Grace referred to in the film, which is really anecdotal evidence. She said she used to be stung a lot more when she was a child, and now she's not being stung as much. That's not scientific. That's a story, but we don't know, and so there's a real need to do that. And I think one of the other things we've really seen, or a statistic that shocked me quite a lot, is that in a review, one of the main hospitals in Nairobi, so the Kenyatta National Hospital, in a review done between 2002 and 2003, showed that the majority of poisoning cases at the poisoning center there was actually as a result of pesticides, and 54% of those pesticides was organophosphates. And I think this is a really striking statistic to show that, we're not just talking about, accidental poisonings through household cleaning agents, but actually the use of pesticides.
Okay. And what about the fact of that there is quite a high amount of pesticides being very toxic, belonging to the highly hazardous pesticides, use of pesticides being already withdrawn or even banned in Europe? Did you observe this within your studies as well?
Yeah, so it's clear that 33%, if we look at the database of Kenyan products, 33% of the products that are registered for use in Kenya are banned in the EU. And these are products that we can still see that are being used, or active ingredients, that are being used in local product formulations and on food residues. So Europe is the second highest exporter, second to China, of pesticide products to Kenya.
Mm-hmm. And as I said already, we discussed yesterday that Germany or Europe is facing a problem in pesticide application, or the amount of pesticides as well. And also that there is quite a gap in the pesticide registration, or some issues around the pesticide registration. Did you observe anything similar in terms of pesticide registration in Kenya?
Yeah, I think from our side, certainly the registration process here means that there's no local data is collected. So a lot of the applications are informed by studies that are done in European or American contexts. When a product is registered in Kenya, only the purity and efficacy of the product is tested. So we're not looking at how these formulations sort of would play out or affect sort of local species, and not adapting maximum residue levels, for example, based on Kenyan diets, as would be the case for maize, where this is eaten a lot more frequently by Kenyans than it would be necessarily by people in Europe. So you would expect that there are different sort of maximum residue levels that are allowable in Kenya. So this is one of the main challenges we've tried to bring to the attention of the pesticides regulator here is this registration process.
So, yeah, there are clearly gaps in the registration process of pesticides as well, which need to be tackled, right, to ensure a more sustainable agriculture in Kenya.
Yeah, and I also think, it goes back a little bit to what we were saying around, or what you were saying, that there's this assumption that if it comes from, what Katja, was saying, that there's this assumption that if it comes from the EU, the product is going to be good for us. So, or there will be no problem with it. So, I think this sort of assumption carries through around, registration. There's this assumption that the registration process in the EU is flawless, whereas it is in fact quite subjective, and based on a series of trials where the figures and statistics can be manipulated in order for a pesticide to be approved from this laboratory phase to a real world environment, and I think that is something that really needs to be brought out more strongly in the Kenyan context.
Yeah, what has been identified as a gap in the registration process in Europe yesterday was also that the pesticides, or the impact of pesticides, is not actually assessed where the pesticides are in use, which is on the field. Yeah, and that's where the biodiversity is decreasing. And I think that's a major issue for countries in the global south, because the environment is so different there. So, but what did you do with all that data and knowledge? Like, what has been the response of Route to Food Initiative and other civil society actors so far? What has been done in Kenya?
Yeah, I mean, it's really been, and I have to extend again thanks, to you and to Katja, to this film that was produced, because it's really kick-started or reignited, shall I say, a strong movement in the public, and a really strong public debate around the use of pesticides in the country. One of the white papers that we published through the Route to Food Initiative informed a petition in the Kenyan Parliament, which calls for the withdrawal of harmful active ingredients. This petition received a very favorable response from the National Committee on Health. The Committee on Health recommended, just to fast track, sounds like not a lot's been done in the last 3 years, but a huge amount has been done. But basically, the Committee on Health recommended the Kenyan regulator to do a review of all active ingredients registered in Kenya. And so this has actually happened. It's been stalled as a result of the lockdown, COVID, obviously, but it's happening. So it's not all the active ingredients in the country, but it's 30 of them. With other civil society actors, and with local scientists, we formed this task force now, which has submitted a dossier of evidence, which basically responds to the regulator's call for public participation in this review process that they're doing. So I'm hopeful and expect that this year we would see the withdrawal, or some action at least taken on some of these active ingredients, because, like I said, the work reignited concerns that have been raised, long before by other civil society, specifically wildlife organizations around carbofuran and wildlife poisoning and things like this. So that's regard to the political process. In terms of public visibility, there's a lot of conversation going on social media. These screenings are a huge impulse to conversation and awareness creation, both amongst consumers and amongst producers. So, these are some of the processes that we continue to shadow, and some of the activities that we continue to engage with through various sort of creative communications and things like this, because it's really important. And I think maybe I just end this question by saying, we wouldn't have gotten as far or made as much progress as we've made in the last 3 years if we were not already landing on fertile ground. Sorry, there's a bit of the irony there, but there already was a debate happening in Kenya around food safety more broadly. And so this issue of pesticides has really been taken up in a strong way.
Yeah. Okay, and approaching the registration body, sensitizing the public more and more. How have all these actions been received and discussed so far, especially from industry, from government, but also from farmers and even the consumers, the general public?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm not a farmer, but I've had the chance to hear the stories of many. And there really seems there's really mixed feelings coming from farmers, and I can understand this, you know, because there is a very real problem and crisis. Like, how do we deal with pests and you know, I mean, pest invasions and various funguses and things like this. You know, and there's like a lack of alternative or lack of knowledge of how we could transition from a conventional agriculture to, for example, an agroecological approach. So there are some success stories, but there is this mixed feeling. There seems to be an interest, especially because there are success stories, and especially where, you know, when the carrot on this is like the promise of this EU export market, okay, which is really, really hectically testing for MRLs that exceed standards or don't meet the standards, okay, in the EU. So farmers lose out on that market if they're not on this export market. So there certainly is an interest in transition, but it's a bit like, what do we do? Because there's huge influence of industry, you know, through local radio advertising, and like we saw in the film, you know, these like agriculture exhibitions. So that's really the sense from farmers. The regulator I've spoken to a little bit. There is the same sort of sentiment where it's like we need these pesticides and these plant protection products to deal with our tropical pest situation. You know, we're we have different climatic conditions to the EU. But in that said, we are seeing, you know, certain commitments because a review is being undertaken. From industry, the response has not been so warm. We've been sort of really labeled that this is anti-science. You know, this is the influence of European governments, you know, in Kenyan affairs. And really, the industry really keeps going on around this. It all comes down to safe use. So there's not a problem. We just need to solve for this issue of safe use. And a lot of blame is placed on the farmers. And, you know, given the contextual realities that we've discussed here today and spoken about, there's not enough, I think, seriousness given to how can we mitigate risk in these circumstances where we don't have buffer zones, where homesteads are really like on the field where pesticides are being sprayed, and so on and so on.
Yeah, but I think also from the regulator point of view, there's a lot happening, right? As in Katja's documentary, it was saying, and at the end, the CEO was replaced. We probably don't know if it's the result out of this campaign, but and the need for relooking and reassessing certain pesticides, but that's a fact. And what I also realized is that there is a lot of fear creation from the industry to say, we need these pesticides. Without these pesticides, we're facing food insecurity in the whole country, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's also quite relevant here. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Laila.
Okay.
Let's move to Nigeria. Ikena, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for having me on board.
So recently, the Heinrich-Böll Foundation in Nigeria released 2 reports on the use of highly hazardous pesticides. How is the situation in Nigeria? What are the biggest issues around pesticide use over there?
Okay, for Nigeria, the situation is not too different from Kenya, except that the government seems to have an early response when we noticed that Nigeria's food exports to the EU were being rejected. That was quite a high for the Nigerian government because it threatened the revenue stream. Somehow people have been for so long living with the negative impact of pesticide, but people didn't seem to come out to make a call against improved regulation. We've had instances where people actually complained about local chemicals being used to store foods, but I think our report not just having that report, but going out to mobilize civil society group and really engage the government with our reports really raised a lot of concerns and really mobilized a lot of actions and reactions. So the report really did a whole lot of wake up for a lot of agencies and civil society organizations.
Yeah, and I found it quite astonishing that actually the data, the number of very toxic pesticides being used in Kenya and Nigeria, the percentage is more or less the same. And even when we look at countries like South Africa, where the pesticide use is higher, but the percentage of really toxic ones is also the same. It's also always around 30-40%, which is actually quite high. And also knowing that these pesticides, most of them are actually already withdrawn because they're causing human health or environmental problems. So, we haven't looked at more countries in Africa, but I assume the situation is not very much different there. And Kenia, what about the registration process of pesticides? Did you came upon any gaps or issues around there in the last year while you were working on this?
Basically, for Nigeria, the registration processes are not thorough. Not thorough in the sense that a lot of the government agencies and institutions that are supposed to be doing this check, a lot of them have very, very low capacity, largely underfunded. Corruption factor is also there. Issues of human capacity is also there. And we also have issues of duplication of agencies, playing overlapping roles in terms of, these checks. So these were very, very evident in most of our studies and even reality. A lot of the agencies have multiple functions, and most of them are basically just collecting budget allocations without really doing the job because they lack the knowledge, they lack the right capacity. Laboratories are largely not functioning. There's not enough fund to actually go out there to the markets to do samples. There's nobody actually going out there to really regulate. And of course, we won't forget about political pressures, that come through companies, supporting policies and the like to make sure that a lot of these commodities really coming here. Institutions in Nigeria are largely weak. A lot of institutions are really, really weak. A lot of the policies that are drafted for the sectors are being sponsored by a lot of private companies. Recently, we saw something like that with the Pesticide Council bill. Maybe I could give details of that as we discuss further, but it's really, really companies taking advantage of weak institutions that lack capacity and clarity in terms of what we should do. And I think just like Katja said, that narrative of we cannot produce food without this pesticide, I think it's almost like the biggest problem that we have here. That narrative of there's no other alternative except the use of highly hazardous pesticide and really putting the blame on farmers. It's really, really a campaign that has gone for way too long. The blame is always put on the farmer. He's not using the safety equipment and the rest of that. But in terms of safety in the use of these chemicals, there's a price on safety, which are reality here in Nigeria, in Kenya, and many African countries, cannot afford it. Safety comes at a cost which many farmers and realities cannot afford. Protective equipment comes at a cost, and a lot of those things are just put on the farmer without putting the price tag on it and putting that on manufacturers. But hopefully with reports like this and mobilizations from HBS, civil society organizations waking up and really standing in front of the government and the legislatures, we hope to see a whole lot of change.
Yeah, and how do you organize that it's actually moving on? Like, what's happening on the ground? Is it similar to Kenya with, is there already an awareness on food safety issues, or is it completely different? And what are your next steps? What are you doing right now then? Kenia? I think we lost him. Did we lose him? Okay, so if Kenia is not there anymore, I can't see him anymore, then let's move back to Germany and Europe. Laila, what can we do here in Germany and Europe to improve the situation? So what would you demand from the German European politicians and civil society to support your movement?
Yeah, so thanks Silke. I hope Kenia comes back so we can listen to the end of what he was saying.
Okay.
I learned a lot.
Sorry for that.
There
you're
you
back. Do you
Okay.
want to go back?
Let's move back to Kenia first before we
All right.
taking the loop to Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for that. My network changed.
No problem. Did you still get my question?
Yes, I think I did.
Okay. Do you want to?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes. The question is how do you move forward? Like, what do you do now? What are your plans now? What are the first your next steps, and what has been already formed? For example, the Pesticide Alliance, and are these movements sort of similar to Kenia? And also the question on is there already an awareness, or was there already an awareness, as in Kenia, on food safety issues? Or are you opening a whole new chapter in Nigeria?
So for Nigeria, I think what we have discussions in very tiny silos, and they are not enough to cause a lot of action. So basically what we've done, it's see how we bring everybody on board. So we have as a result of the report that's been out, we've been able to form the Alliance for Action on Pesticide in Nigeria. And we have over 25 big civil society organizations and farmers group, consumer protection group in there. So it's a bigger force bringing in the work, the resource of different organizations. So we're having like a more amplified voice. What the Alliance has done within the short period of time, it's put together some legislative position reacting to some sector policy documents. So we've responded to that and we're getting a whole lot of attention. The National Assembly has given the Alliance some sort of like concession and some seats to put together some technical review as regards to the bill. So part of what we're trying to do now is see how we put the message out there. We need more information, and that is also coming out there. We're planning to put out more conferences. We're trying to put out more public awareness materials in the form of fact sheets, in the form of animations. We're also looking at promoting the alternatives. So we'll be seeing a whole lot of field tours to agroecology sites. We'll be looking at producing manuals in terms of and trainings for organic agricultural practices, because a lot of farmer groups, especially the small women holder farmers, we have a group called True. They are part of the Alliance, really large. We're also exploring how we promote basically the knowledge of organic practices, give them on-field training and off-field training, and then see how we follow up with core legislations in the National Assembly to make sure that the kind of policy frameworks that we have in EU, more stringent frameworks are also being put in place in Nigeria. So basically, those are strategies for now. More awareness, more knowledge, more training, more skills for farmers and consumers. Engagement at the legislative levels to see that we have stricter regulations in Nigeria. Also collaborate and continue support with those government agencies that are responding positively, like the Ministry of Health. They are taking more active step and have given some sort of like instruction to the food agency that's under their ministry to see how they could also review the list of banned substances in Nigeria. We hope that goes in favor of really stepping up the number of lists and also putting in place stricter regulation on ground, because we have a lot of policies, but implementation is really poor. So we'll see how we follow up at that front as well.
Wow, lots of things to do. Okay, now we need to get the loop back to Germany and back to Europe. We're running out of time, but I can see most of the questions have been answered already. So we still have a little bit more time for discussion, another 10 minutes. So, Laila, what can we do here in Germany and Europe to improve the situation? What would you expect or demand from the European and German politicians and civil society?
Yeah, so thanks, Silke. I mean, I think the one thing that urgently needs attention is this double standard. I think that the German government should follow the example set by France, where, you know, as of this year, the French Constitutional Council has basically said it would be illegal to produce and export products from France that are not allowed for use in the EU. I think this is one of the first urgent things. I think we need to look at amendments to this Rotterdam Convention, which establishes a prior informed consent procedure. I think in many ways this becomes sort of a scapegoat for European governments to export pesticides, it being okay because, you know, we have this prior informed consent. And so we let people know what the issues are with these products, but it's up to them whether they want to use it or not. Iken has highlighted that doesn't address, vulnerabilities in African governments or African countries where there are sort of weaker controls and less resources, for example, monitoring and testing at registration phase. So that would be the second thing. And I think the third thing would really be looking at investments, especially in sort of terms of development aid and donor funding. So these investments really need to be all streamlined towards agroecological transition. There's a lot of money going into agriculture from the German government. It really needs to go towards transition. And not at the same time still continue to support industrial agricultural approaches, because this is the tension that we're seeing at the moment. It's like, on the one hand, yes, we're supporting transition and agroecology, but, you know, we're still supporting all these other problematic sort of programs and projects as well. And this would mirror steps that are being taken in the EU, the Green Deal, Farm to Fork strategy, and especially also commitments made by the new coalition government. In the coalition agreement, agroecology is coming out strongly, and especially action to reduce the use of pesticides in Germany. And so if that is the approach that's being taken in the country, that absolutely has to be mirrored in actions and foreign policy with respect to agriculture and environment on the African continent and elsewhere.
And the evolution of the double standard is in the coalition contract as well. So we are on our best way, hopefully. But we will discuss that more tomorrow evening. And yesterday evening, during the discussion, it sounded quite promising that pesticide use data in Germany will be soon available publicly. And I think this is quite a thing for Kenya as well. Export data, should be publicly available. What are the companies actually doing? Where do they export to? And when I was just looking recently at the export notifications for Kenya for active ingredients under the Rotterdam Convention, it was quite shocking. Just for January, there were so many active ingredients still being exported to Kenya. I wonder why there are so many.
I wonder about that too.
Yeah,
I really don't know why that would be the case, because already it's not like, we haven't had a surge in the desert locust invasion, so I don't know what's informed this real spike. If you find out, or if anyone on this webinar knows, please drop it in the chat. Absolutely. So that is worrying. And I think also the other thing, I know we've discussed this a lot, but the ability to purchase data sets, at amounts of like $6,000 and so on. I mean, this is just, prohibitive amounts to be able to access information that is in the interest of public health and public policy. So it should be made freely available.
Yeah. Okay, Kenia, so we heard mitigation measures can't be implemented and personal protection equipment is not available. Information about pesticide use is not distributed. So these are all things industry may be responsible for. Is there anything that the pesticide industry should do to improve the issues around pesticide use in Nigeria? What do you expect from them?
From my stand, I think they should be more responsible. We have an extended producer responsibility legislation. They don't need to wait for that legislation to be specifically carved out for them. So we need to see a lot of these companies actually investing in consumer services, consumer use of their product services, you know. And I doubt if many of these companies would want to do this because safety comes at a cost. So apart from maybe companies, you know, standing up to a moral position to invest in provision of, you know, not just training, but really investing in these kits and ensuring the safe use of their chemicals, their products, I think that's very, very necessary. While the Nigerian government also needs to step up to ensure, you know, stricter measures. But for companies, I really pray that they could move beyond profit and, you know, tilt a little bit towards human safety and really invest in, you know, more safety, provision of more safety equipment, and really putting a stop to the use of highly hazardous substances and active ingredients that really threaten both human life and environment.
Mm-hmm. And the strong lobbying role in the regulation bodies as well, as you mentioned, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it would really be good if we could also see a lot of companies really handing off and really respecting national sovereignty. I think in some instances it could begin to look a little bit embarrassing when you look at the country's national law and then you see international companies' fingerprints all over it. Not just having these policies with the fingerprint of, for instance, CropLife. Members of CropLife, you know, we have the Syngenta, the Bayer there, and these companies basically allegedly support the development and drafting of many of these policies. And by the time you actually take your time to go through these proposed laws and policies, you know, in the National Assembly of a country, and you see clauses that allow acceptance of gifts, you know, it's basically almost these companies promoting corruptions in these countries just to make profit. So it's really disheartening, and we really like to see not just these companies, but investors, you know, citizens that actually buy shares in this company really pull back. You know, we need to a little bit shift towards higher moral standings in with the companies we buy our shares from, and you know what this company actually do with their investment. I think somehow we're all responsible.
Very true. I think the documentary also highlighted quite nicely some alternatives and alternative agricultural systems already in place in Kenya. And Ikena or Laila or Katja, any one of you, are there any other alternatives happening on the ground in Nigeria or Kenya?
For Nigeria, we have a agroecology sites. We have a couple of them. Basically, we have one here in Abuja where it's 100% organic. We see multiple cropping and the results are amazing. We've done a virtual tour. We've taken different stakeholders from civil societies to farmer, even the GIZ. They've also been to the farm. They've seen the produce. They've seen the yield. It's totally unbelievable what organic agriculture could produce comparatively to the use of pesticide. And the result is just huge. And it's really bringing a lot of people towards the side of agroecology. And so we're beginning to, part of what we're also doing is see how we identify more of these farms, just like the agroecology site in Yangoje. We have the Songhai farm. So a lot of these solutions are on ground, and we're really beginning to, want to show more of these solutions. So yes, we have these things, these alternatives on ground, but we need to really scale up these sites. We need to see how we replicate, support the replication of this type of farm in terms of knowledge, in terms of size and scale. Basically, they will need a lot of support for both public awareness and replicating such solutions at different scale.
Mhm. And Laila, any last sentence about alternatives on the ground in Kenya? What's happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar in that there are, there's this sort of niche group of people that are using integrated pest management or organic farming. I think one of the big things, when it comes to rethinking how the food system can look, it's important that this is captured not only at a farm level, but also in terms of social and political dimensions. So any sort of support or any sort of meaningful transition is not going to happen in absence of sort of supporting economic and fiscal policies, budget investments, and the size, not just the size, but also the programs that are supported by national and county governments. So and supportive legislation. So I think, it's the work of the political foundation. This is an really important element to make sure that people understand transition and agroecological approaches. This isn't just something that's synonymous with change that needs to happen on the farm. And it's equally important, much like the La Via Campesina movement, is that, farmers understand that the surrounding political context is something that they need to pay attention to and actively participate in. Otherwise, transition would not really be possible.
Mm. And food sovereignty as an alternative food system as well, yeah? So, I mean, there is one question here about the problem that indigenous seeds can't be used, I mean, these might be the strongest seeds and without any need for any pesticide use. And if Kenyans are not allowed to use them, then how do we start the solutions? How do we go about the solutions? So I don't know if you want to leave a couple of words around that. That's the question.
I mean, yeah, that's what we were saying around the political context, because it's the UPOV agreement that is basically penalizing, the use of indigenous seeds. And so that's the legislative context that we're working in. And that's why these agreements also need to be, they need to be in line, at least if they're not going to lead the change that we want to see, on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I hate saying on the ground, but on the ground.
Started saying it, sorry. Okay, Beate, can I call on you if there are any more open questions?
There is only one question left, and this is about land grab. There was a question if it's true that Chinese companies are acquiring the most fertile land, and that the farmers, I think that was when we were talking about the Kenyan farmers, are left with the idle land, with the not so fertile soil. I don't know if anybody can confirm or say something to that.
Yeah, I mean, Beate, I'm not sure who asked that question, but I wouldn't have enough information to be able to comfortably respond to the question of land grabbing. Yeah, so I don't think it would be responsible to give a response to that.
Yeah, maybe we should just leave this to another occasion. I'm sure that we are picking up land grab as such on the African continent at another time.
Cool, okay.
Okay, aber sonst keine weiteren Fragen. Die meisten wurden beantwortet, richtig?
Die meisten, ja. Vielen Dank,
right.
Katja.
So no further questions. Most questions have been answered. Well, thank you, Katja. Right. So let me try and summarize. It's clear that we are dealing with a major problem when it comes to the use of pesticides. We've heard about the example of Kenya and Nigeria, but this is not due to the small farmers. This is due to the infrastructure. Many toxic pesticides are still on the market, although they've been taken off the market in Europe a long time ago. They are still being exported. Plus, we lack protective gear, protective equipment and a lack of knowledge and information about the use of toxic pesticides, which enhances the health risks. And it's certainly important to underline that this is not about a general ban on pesticides as such. It's about a ban on highly toxic pesticides and a more critical approach when it comes to the use of pesticides. And we know that the markets are growing in Africa, and the industry sees a major chance to sell pesticides in Africa. At the same time, the possibilities in Kenya and in Nigeria are limited, and the information is limited to yet. There is a rising awareness in the population, and there are initiatives of the civil society that support the campaigns. And it's really important to do away with the double standard. And we will talk about this tomorrow night when talking about South Africa and Brazil. So for the time being, I would like to thank our guests, and I would like to thank Laila in particular, because it's 11:30 already. So we are happy that you did not fall asleep. But I would like to thank also Kenia and Katja. And I would like to thank the participants who have stayed with us and shown their interest in the topic. So thank you and good night. Bye-bye.
Silke, hörst du mich? Hörst du mich? Gibt es
Ja.
gibt es
Hallo? Ist Schluss, ja?